Nice big round of applause. And here he is. Yes. Enjoying the rapturous applause this morning, Danny?
Fantastic. What a great way to start the day.
Not bad at all. We did expect to be eating Eggs Benedict together, didn't we? But a bit of a mix-up this morning.
We did. A little battinato and Eggs Benedict, but
oh, yes.
We adjusted.
Well, I think I first met you maybe a couple of years ago. And I was having probably my customary chicken pie, my empada de frango and my galao at the Markel Cafe. And I heard an American accent saying, "Oh, this language, it's so difficult." At which point, I think I leant across to you and said, "What are you talking about? It's easy." And we struck up a bit of a conversation because I think you said, "Are you kidding me?" at that moment.
That sounds like me. And I think an hour and a half later, we were on our third coffees. Yeah,
right. Yes. We bump into each other from time to time at the Markel Cafe, which is the best in San Martino, isn't it?
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's such a typical experience in San Martino, meeting strangers or running into friends and, spending just really great quality time with them.
Yeah, I went there yesterday, and I think they were closed to enjoy a bit of Carnival fun. So I had to go to another cafe in town, and the atmosphere was so great. The sort of thing I think you're talking about, the Portuguese cafe, that one of the many hearts of the community. And the atmosphere was so great. I recorded it and sent it to a friend who's currently visiting the United States. And said, "Are you missing this?" And all of life is in that recording of the people coughing, chairs scraping, the coffee machine working, people talking to each other in Portuguese. Absolutely brilliant atmosphere. And I think he was glad to hear that, and we'll be glad to be returning to it. So that's where we met. And it was a fascinating conversation that we had about how you got to be here in Portugal. Would you mind sharing that with our Gumper friends here in this community about your journey to Portugal?
Sure. It's, it's a little involved, lots of spokes on the wheel, but basically, maybe about 15 years ago, I started Googling best places in the world to retire.
Right.
Just thinking out into the future. Yeah. And back then, I don't know if it's still the case, Portugal was number one on really every list that you could find. And so that was on our radar, had been for a while. We really came down to Spain or Portugal as a place to land. We considered all sorts of places in the U.S. We considered some places in Central America, and they all had significant drawbacks of one form or another for us. And we love the idea of moving from the U.S. to Europe, getting onto the continent, having Spain and Italy, in our backyards.
Nice.
Yeah, and I heard you talking about the weather before we got on. Yes. It is a bit challenging right now, but the weather's generally pretty good. It's somewhat similar to Southern California when I grew up back in the 60s, when we had a lot more rain and storms. And you know what I love about the rain here, Carl? What I love about the rain is the sunshine that always follows, because it's always so crisp and clean, and it's just beautiful. And it happens all the time, right? The weathers can be somewhat tropical in nature, where it's rainy in the morning and then it's at 1 or 2 o'clock, beautiful blue skies.
Yes.
So
and hailstones.
And hailstones. That was quite interesting. Our backyard looked like it had been snowing. Yeah. So so my wife and I centered on Spain and Portugal. We had taken a long trip to Spain, loved the areas that we visited, really liked Madrid quite a bit, and kind of ironic that we ended up in San Martino de Porto. But we were planning to make a trip to Portugal to check out Portugal, and then COVID hit. So we couldn't travel, obviously, but we had lots of time in our houses, in our home, and with YouTube and Google, and did a bunch of research. And ultimately decided that Portugal was the place that we wanted to land. So that's sort of in a nutshell encapsulated chapter 1. What we then did was we actually bought a house here before we traveled to Portugal.
Wow. So how did you lock in on San Martino? I mean, especially if Madrid was your first choice, it's quite the contrast.
It is. There's nothing in common. I think when we pivoted to Portugal, we quickly ruled out the Algarve. Just didn't fit for us for a variety of reasons. We wanted a house rather than an apartment. Lisbon which looked like a great city from everything we could find on our internet research, and of course turns out to be just absolutely love Lisbon. But it was just too expensive, to the Cascais, Estoril areas were just too pricey for a home. So the Silver Coast, a friend of mine suggested we start looking at the Silver Coast. I'd never heard the term. Googled it, houses for sale on the Silver Coast. We ended up actually buying the first house that we saw.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That goes against a lot of advice, doesn't it?
For sure. Yeah, no doubt. But, they say God looks out for babies and fools, Carl. I'm 65.
Oh, I've not heard that, but it makes complete sense.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of the line at 65. But, yeah, I mean, we're really very fortunate because it all turned out fantastically well. It wasn't a complete throwing of a dart with my eyes closed, because I did speak with several brokers about what was happening in the real estate market here, and prices were appreciating. And I actually asked the broker that we bought the house from, if we come and we absolutely hate it, can we rent the house out? And what do you think that we would receive in rent? And trying to look at it as an investment. And it all sort of made sense from that perspective.
It adds up, doesn't it? Yeah. And definitely it's got better and better, really, hasn't it? As you and I have lived here over the last few years.
Without a doubt. 2 years for us, yeah.
Yeah. And where did you say you came from?
We're from Los Angeles. Yeah, Vanessa from Jamaica, and we met in Los Angeles.
Wow. Okay. And so, how has that been? And presumably, that's why you had an idea to be in Madrid. It's the fast life, isn't it, in Los Angeles for sure? I'm guessing, and Madrid might have a resonance of that. And this is not like Los Angeles, really. How is? Well, I don't think it is anyway. That's on first thinking about it. How has that contrast been for you?
As you are saying, extremely different. What attracted us to Madrid was, it's the capital. It's beautiful parks and cafes, and it's a wonderful walking city. We really like to walk a lot when we travel on vacation. And Madrid is a wonderful city to walk in. Felt for us sort of like Paris and New York, where you can just go out, turn right or left, and end up having a great day.
Yes.
There's not much other than the weather. There's not much in common between Los Angeles and San Martino or Portugal, I think, for that matter. We're so accustomed to traffic, congestion. Those are the two big differences in Portugal. We can drive 20 miles and see 3 or 4 other cars. In Los Angeles, you're seeing taillights all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there is that Caldas de Rainha rush hour, isn't there, when you get more than 10 cars in a row sometimes.
That's true.
Which I find infuriating, I have to say. But I'll just choose But quite the contrast. And it looks to me, I mean, whenever I see you in the cafe, you're loving life here. And I mean, the integration, you're keen to learn the language, and you've got into business here. The family's got into business here, which I think is fantastic as well. Would you mind telling us a bit more about that?
Sure. When we decided to move to a small town, by the way, I'll tell you, the first time we visited, we'd spent 3 days in Lisbon. I love Lisbon. Then we came up to San Martino, Porto, when it was the tail end of COVID. So it was unusually quiet. And I thought to myself, and I said to Vanette, oh my God, did we make a mistake? It looks like we're moving to a ghost town.
Yes.
She's from a small town in Jamaica. So for her, it was a bit like coming home. I needed 24 hours to adjust, yes. And then fell in love with the place. Really got the charm of it all, and since then it's just gotten better. But when we decided to move to this small town, and we're relatively young, and we were still wanting to be active, we decided one way to remain active and to get involved in the community was to look into starting a business. And then ultimately we decided to buy a business. Our son, Sam, runs the Churrascaria Novo Sabor up near the Mercado. And so Sam and Shayna, our daughter, both ended up moving here with us. So we're really fortunate. That was not part of the plan. And,
was it not? So that's a development, is it? A subsequent development?
It is, absolutely.
Wow.
So, and it's, it would be, having them here is quite a different experience, obviously, for us as parents than having them, thousands of miles away.
Yeah, that's lovely for you. I didn't realize. As I see you as operating as a family unit here, I'm thinking, well, that was always the plan, but that's been a nice plot twist, clearly.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was Vinette and Dan moving to Portugal for a better life and a wonderful, exciting chapter.
Yeah.
And I think maybe 3 or 4 months before we left, Sam said, hey, would you guys mind if I came? Absolutely, it'd be fantastic. And our daughter Shayna was a professional dancer, and she had been dancing in Europe. So she was working in Germany and Switzerland and France. And then she decided to move back to LA right about the time we were moving here. She was in Los Angeles for about 2 or 3 months and decided it wasn't for her. I think it's when you've lived here, on this side of the Atlantic for a while, it's different. I won't say it's better. I mean, for some people it's better, for some people it's not, but it's very different. The quality of life, in my opinion, is so much better in Portugal and places we've visited and spent significant time in Europe. People really value family and friendships and time on the weekend. If you get your lawyer on a phone call on the weekend, you're a lucky guy, because 3 o'clock on Friday, they're off, they're barbecuing, they're walking, they're spending time with their kids, and you get them on in the morning. That's wonderful.
Yeah, a little bit different to LA for sure. I suspect in the legal profession there. And you are very brave, I think. Starting a business is not for the faint-hearted here in Portugal. And you've done a lot, and you brought the family, and you've done a lot in a very short space of time, including starting a business. How was that? I'm guessing you're going to tell me that was easy as well, starting a business. Not only a business, but going into a very Portuguese business as well, right? So how's that experience been?
Yeah, it's been a growing challenge and experience, Carl. It's really
okay. All right. Yes.
Yeah. It's been wonderful in a lot of ways, and it's been challenging in a lot of ways, because the employment law is completely different. The tax laws are completely different. Everything is on paper. You don't receive invoices from your vendors electronically. Everything is paper, and you've got there's tax compliance basically every month. There's a lot of people will say there's a lot of bureaucracy in Portugal. I think that's true. Natives tell you that, immigrants tell you that, and it's really true, and that's something one definitely needs to adjust to. On balance, it's a piece of cake. In terms of comparing life here versus life in LA, in terms of enjoyment day to day, week to week. Yeah.
And so the chicken shop is Churra Square Novo Sabor, the new flavor chicken shop. And do you know what? It's a very special place for us, because it was the very first place that before your son owned it, obviously, and ran it. The previous owners, it was the first chicken shop that I experienced in Portugal, because we were stranded in San Martino de Porto. That's how we got to be here. And we were living in a hotel until we figured out the next move, until the camper van was repaired. And so I'd be going out to look for places to eat in the evening in September. Off season, it had got quieter. The weather was still lovely, and it was, we had the town to ourselves in many ways. And I walked around the town, and I could sense this aroma from that building. And it was pretty much not much of a shop front, grills, really, like metal grills on the outside. And then some evenings a door would be open and there'd be a hubbub of people, but the most incredible aroma of grilled chicken coming out of the ventilation system and onto the street. And for a foreigner, it was such a weird experience to think I was gate crashing a party or a private house, because it wasn't as if it was, it didn't look like retail. It looked like a private chicken club. But I thought this is so tasty. The smell is so arousing and delicious. I must go in and see if I take my chance and see if I can get some food. And got a takeaway. The very first, that whole beautiful process of seeing the chickens being turned on the grill. Asked if you want, picante, and being warned it's very hot. Be careful, it's very hot, and which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. And then I felt like a proper hunter-gatherer as I went back to my family in the hotel room and opened the lid of this foil tray. and out came the aroma of grilled chicken with the picante sauce and some fries, and it was just it was a lovely first bonding experience here with Portugal, and that's what your son's got himself into, right?
And that is such a great description, Carl, because and I can relate to it completely. You know, especially if you don't speak Portuguese and you don't know the customs. The first time we approached the restaurant, it was a little bit intimidating because there's a crowd of people outside, and they all seem to know what's going on. It's sort of organized chaos, you know. And but yeah, the aroma of the chicken, and I think we first became introduced to migas there.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And yeah, it's of course now we both know that it's basically a staple of Portugal, right? Absolutely. The Portuguese food and the churrasqueira is it's almost the backbone of all these little towns. They all have at least one.
Yeah, and they're all similarly secretive, aren't they? It's an initiation process. He's like, I need a ticket. Yeah, you know, there's a ticket machine. So, and then even if you've got a ticket, it's like, have you ordered? Like, no, I didn't know I had to order. Is it possible to have a bit of chicken? Well, we'll see. We'll see what. Just stand over there, and we'll see what we can do for you. But your son has what taken that up, picked it up, and run with it as a concept.
He really has. He's kind of he's approached it as really as not only as a restaurant, a takeaway, but kind of as a business. So he looked at what the challenges that the prior restaurant had been experiencing, wait times, a little bit of disorganization in terms of if you had made a reservation, of course you can call and make a reservation, place an order, and then pick up your food. But often people were complaining that, you know, they had made a reservation to pick their food up at 1, and people were walking in, you know, and picking up their food, placing orders and picking up their food before the prior placed order had been received. So Sam's really cleaned all of that stuff up, so that it really functions in a really orderly and more efficient way. So that's great. So people can expect if they, you know, place an order to pick up their food at 1 o'clock or, you know, 6 o'clock at night, it will be ready. And pop in and pick it up. And the other thing he's done, of course, is he's introduced a great burger. So he calls it the California burger, which Californians will recognize as similar to an In-N-Out burger, which is one of the favorite Southern California burger joints, right?
Yeah, so I've been there. Absolutely. Yes. It's very straightforward and well loved, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. It started out. It's a tiny little shop mostly with a drive-through, and you know, simple menu, 3 or 4 items. So Sam's started this burger, which has really taken off. Everybody loves it, but and the kids especially so.
Well, we must go and do that. And of course, he's got Jamaican chicken DNA as well, right? So is that? I mean, and it must be very tempting to introduce things, which I think is not easy in Portugal, especially in a chicken shop. It's very traditional. So has he managed to bring some, as well as the burger, other influences, including maybe the Jamaican vibes as well?
So that could be the understatement of the century. You know, people like what they like. You know, very, very proud of their cuisine. Yeah. And Sam does introduce some new items, but they are more, people seem to like them more in the summer when we have lots of people from outside San Martino coming to visit or have second homes here. And they're Europeans and Americans, but you know, what he's really focused on doing is making the migas the best that it can possibly be.
Very wise.
Carrot rice and the duck rice really spent a lot of time to kind of like fine tune those recipes and making them more traditional. So he's bought traditional Portuguese cookbooks and researched these, you know, great grandmother recipes.
That is superb.
And then tested those out, and the soups are great. And you know, soup
is important, isn't it? And that's what he'll be judged on, right? That it will be the traditional things, and the understatement of the century, things being quite traditional. And it's been the undoing, I think, of expats who've said, right, you know, I'm going to bring my fantastic cuisine to Portugal and they're going to love it. It's like, well, they might, but it's not going to be an overnight thing. And you need to carry on doing what they've come here for, or what they've come to your establishment for, right? Or what they know it for.
Without a doubt. Yeah, one of my original sort of thoughts was to start an American style kind of whiskey bar,
Oh,
like
really? Yeah.
American music,
Yeah.
whiskeys, sliders and flatbread pizzas, and just having kind of a Tom Petty, vibe
I'm in.
going.
I'm
And
in.
you and I would be in
Yes.
immediately. I'm not sure that it would really be really have uptake here, other than during the summer, when I think that
That's right.
people would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we
that
had Bev
needs.
and Dan, didn't we? We had Bev and Dan had their fantastic American food truck by Pit Stop, and
Yeah,
the food was great, and it was a lot of favorites of American folks, and that's how it stayed. There may have been one or two adventurous Portuguese tourist visitors, but they catered for the expat foreigner crowd. And that's how it had to be. And these things have to be taken very carefully. I think those steps have to be taken very carefully. But definitely put me down if you do open the the
I will.
whiskey joint. We'll be along. We could do a show from there. We've got a few comments coming in talking of the Iberian connection. It's so good that Portugal planned to have Spain next door in the way it did, according to Mr. S. So Spain next door, so that I can move there when IMA kicks me out. Come on, it's not gonna be as bad as that. I hope, Mr. S. We're keeping our fingers crossed for you. I love Santa Barbara, California. I mean, that whole coast is awesome, isn't it? I had a great time there with relatives back in 2000 or thereabouts. I know it's changed a lot since then, but I'm sure that same LA soul can still be found there, and that wonderful drive from Los Angeles to San Francisco. In Vegas, there's an amazing chocolate factory, going back to the Obidos chocolate festival that we were talking about. James here grew up in Los Angeles to age 12, then moved to San Francisco, East Bay area, both California, but head and shoulders different. I love Montecito, says Mr. S. Deagle, talking. I think we evoked some memories and some deep muscular responses. I'm talking about chicken this morning. I can smell the chicken, hear the tinfoil tub cracking, crispy fries licking my fingers. All right, he's steady, Deagle, there in Belfast. When you come to San Martino, we'll take you up to the Novo Sabor for sure, and you can choose. You can have both. I think we'll push the boat out. You can have some chicken and one of the California burgers. Jackie's in this morning, and Mr. S says, never miss the Getty Museum every time in LA. I've visited there as well. Do you miss LA at all, Dan?
There are things I miss about LA. I've been
Yeah.
back 4 times, and Vanette and I are going back actually next month
You're right.
because we're putting our house up for sale.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so we're really pulling up the anchor, and we're here. This is home.
And is that unexpected as well? I mean, is that, the family are here now, you've got into business, you're loving here. And did you think you'd be 6 months here, 6 months there? Is that a change too?
Initially, it was 3 months here, 9 months there. Then it was 6 months here, 6 months there.
Yeah.
And then we debated 9 months here and 3 months there. And we thought, why would we do that? Let's just move to Portugal. So that was our evolution over our several trips.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I miss the restaurants. I miss the the great Mexican cuisine and great Thai food, and LA has really wonderful food. Maybe even underappreciated for that, because the community is so diverse. Soul food, Jamaican food, whatever you want, you've got there. I miss a bit of the live music scene because Lisbon's not on the A tier of touring bands. So I miss that a bit. But there's so much, Carl, and I miss my friends, of course. I have really good friends there, but I've got really wonderful friends here as well now. So I think that's one of the biggest and most difficult parts of the transition is, if you're a social person, kind of finding your tribe.
Yes.
Because and what's wonderful is here for us is our friends are from the UK and Australia and France and Spain, and you get a much richer conversation and learning about people's experiences, whether it's their childhood or the work that they did before they came here. It's really wonderful. So I think it's friends, food, and music. But boy, what I don't
think you're alone in that.
I don't miss traffic. I don't miss the paying of a gazillion dollars for parking or trying to find parking. In Portugal, you can park just about anywhere as long as you're not blocking someone's driveway or front door.
And even if you are, it's not the end of the world, is it?
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens too. Right. And don't forget, by way of a consolation, the Rolling Stones are coming to Portugal this year. And Tony Carrera is coming to San Martino as well. Our top artist, Tony Carrera is coming to San Martino for a celebratory gig as well. And it's free. That's the other thing, isn't it? Although it might not be exactly the selection you're looking for musically, most of the gigs are free here in Portugal, aren't they? Just rock up and have a good time.
That is really, really cool. And the live music that we do experience, whether it's in a bar or, in front of the Alcabasa, cathedrals, whatever's going on, it's actually really good. But it's not typically the Rolling Stones, right? It's not whatever your cup of tea is, whether it's Bruno Mars or the Rolling Stones. From what I understand, we used to be on that A tier, and I'm not sure why we're no longer. But on the other hand, if you want to go see people, Madrid and Barcelona is not so far away, and all the big bands
go to or fly to the UK if you really have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Northern California is more or less a halfway experience between LA and Portugal, says James, and Santa Cruz, California, even closer to the Portugal vibe. Good advice here from Jackie. Smash that like button. We've got Dan with us this morning talking about his experience of moving to Portugal and loving life here. Napa Valley is gorgeous. A hot air balloon is not to be missed. Mr. S seems to know it very well over there. I was living in Venice, an LA neighborhood, when I met Steve, now my husband. He was a solid citizen living on a commune. Sounds very Californian suddenly versus my then boyfriend who lived under a bush in the Venice canals. An easy choice. Venice is an old favorite of mine. Is that near Venice Beach? Is that the same one and the same? Venice and Venice Beach? Yeah, okay. Yeah, been there too.
Yeah.
Boston
is not such a wonderful place though now. Really not as safe as I think what Sarah who mentioned might have remembered. It's a bit challenging.
So I hear. Boston is my city. It's a world-class city that has a very European vibe. A few Portuguese over that part of town as well. Bom dia, Malta from JMC. Mr. S can smell the bacalhau in Villamoro. So we're smelling chicken. He's smelling bacalhau. However, news in this morning from Mr. S. Shaga are deporting bacalhau back to Norway, according to rumors. That's very naughty, Mr. S. But funny too. Nope. Shaga is going to change squat. As it turns out, we may or may not talk about American politics because one or two things have been going on over there, Dan. But whether we do or not, I want to ask you. I mean, it sounds like you would recommend this process of moving from America to Portugal. It's worked out great for you. What is your advice to people at the moment who are in the condition you were in? I mean, I think you said 15 years ago, and then it accelerated during COVID. People are now in that sort of situation. Like Portugal looks great. It looks even greater than it did when I first started looking. I need to get over there. What would you say to them?
So I've got a ton of friends back in the States. I was an attorney practicing for 37 years. I have a lot of colleagues. Everyone knows I've moved to Portugal, so I've become the go-to guy. And a lot of the recent calls have been, there was this the change in politics back in November, and so we're thinking of moving. And I've told everyone that I've spoken with that I honestly believe that if that's the reason you're moving, you will end up moving back, because there are a lot of adjustments that one needs to make in living here. There are a lot of creature comforts one has to give up. And it's a big cultural change. So, it's one thing to read, as probably every American did, the articles in the New York Times and the LA Times and the Wall Street Journal about how wonderful it is to live in Portugal. And there are things. Yeah. And
classics.
Classics, exactly. But I don't think that it's, you've got the language. It is a different culture. This is not Santa Barbara, and this is not, it's a different culture. And, I've heard many expats saying, Portugal needs to change this or that. They need to not allow smoking on the outside at the cafe. So they shouldn't allow people to walk around drinking beer on the street. It's like, that's our template. This is their culture. They've been here a lot longer. Their culture has been around quite a bit longer than ours has. And that's part of, frankly, it's a really important part of their culture, right? Because of the, I think it's, Portugal is a poor country. If you're coming from Los Angeles or San Francisco, there are adjustments that one needs to make. So I personally, I don't think that's a sufficient motivation to come and really stay and adjust to the bureaucracy and deal with AMA and getting your driver's license and, you know, having your electricity turned off because you didn't pay your bill correctly, or the bill didn't come in the mail, or you know, any number of things that I think every expat.
Yes, I've got that T-shirt. I do have that T-shirt, and quite
Exactly.
recently as well. Yes.
So, you know, but I love the place. My favorite. I think my favorite thing about Portugal and about São Martinho de Porto, Carl, is Bom Dia. That you walk down the street, a 80-year-old woman who you've never seen before, who's walking your direction, says Bom Dia, or you say Bom Dia and they say Bom Dia back. It's so lovely, and you know, that's another part of their culture, right? Boa tarde, Bom Dia. You know, tudo bem, like, and I think there's a sincerity to it.
Yes.
That I hope never changes, right?
Yeah,
that I hope
agreed. I was doing a live stream with the Portuguese on Monday, and even on comments on YouTube, there was a Portuguese correspondent in the mix, and he responded to something we said and then said, "Oh, sorry, boa tarde." Like, I'm sorry, I got straight down to business. First, the greeting, right? Wherever you go, first the greeting.
Right, and it's really true. I mean, that's. And when you screw it up, because I have somewhat recently, you know, I'm a little anxious to get to whatever the topic of the business is. It's and the person may say back, "Boa tarde." Like,
yes, and you know, don't you? It's a really gentle chiding, isn't it? Of like, hold on a minute, we will get to this thing you want to talk about, but let's first connect human to human, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely lovely. No, says Jackie. Portugal must never change. It's amazing and perfect, is it? Well, that's quite an exaggeration, but we will forgive you that, Jackie. Nowhere's perfect, but we're very close. It has to be said. You want to change Portugal, move to Spain. That is good advice, some very good advice there. So thanks, Dan. Lovely talking to you this morning. Have you got a final message for us? It's been really lovely having a chat with you. Long overdue, and I think we should do another one actually whilst we are being entertained at the Storytellers Palace, as was planned, but didn't work out this morning. But have you got a final message for us?
I don't know that I have a final. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about our experience. I think you're a phenomenal resource, Carl, and I love what you do.
Oh, cheers.
Yeah, no, really good at it. So I always enjoy the pod. You know, you might want to think about bringing on Sam or Shayna for young people,
younger generation. Yeah, definitely.
Because they're 28 and 25. So what's it like to be that age and make the move?
Yeah,
so I think very different experience than someone who's retired, but also very wonderful. And I you know what, I do want to say one thing, that for anyone who's considering this, I have lost 20 pounds since we've moved to Portugal, and it's not through any great efforts. There's some efforts, but the food quality here and what you end up snacking on, if you are somewhat mindful of it, is so much better than the States. The quality of the food is really, that's a reason for young people to move here. We're probably, you know, beyond our sell by date in terms of how the quality of the food may help us, but it certainly can't hurt. But boy, for young people, it's great.
You make a really interesting point there, because there's something about the sort of toxicity of food that makes people, that adds to obesity, I think, isn't there? And the body's inability to process things sometimes. But did you go up before you came down? Because you know that thing about is it the college 15? You put on 15 pounds when you go to college. Yeah. I think there is a Portugal version of that as well, but then it stabilizes and comes down, doesn't it? Because people tend to lead a more active life and eat better food.
Yeah. I don't think I gained any, but I did drink a lot more wine and eat a lot more bread.
Yes. Oh, Portuguese bread. Come on. Absolutely fantastic. All right. Wonderful, Dan. This is, as I say, long overdue, and I hope we have more conversations in the future, and we keep bumping into each other at the cafe. Always great to see you. Good to see you on this screen as well. Thank you so much. Muito obrigado. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Carl. Anytime.
All right. Big round of applause for Dan. And we'll hope to see him again soon. Cheers, Dan. Bye for now. Yeah, and what a great idea. Would love to talk to the younger generation here on Good Morning Portugal. Wonderful, excellent conversation and great advice there, right? I think it chimes with what we say here from time to time. Be careful moving away, having an emotional reaction and moving away from something. You need to be embracing something, moving to Portugal and changing your way of life when you come here. That's what, that's what Dan's saying, is he wanted to, as far as I could make out there, wanted to embrace something new. And, it's understandable why we do want to leave some things behind as well, and a way of life that doesn't suit us so much. But if that's your main reason, as Dan was saying there, you may want to think again. And yeah, quite a chilling sort of reminder, really. You may end up going back if that is your own, if your only motivation. So think carefully about embracing the new as well as rejecting the old. Jackie said it, says, Rui, good morning to you. Good to see you here. Agreed, from a Portuguese who is not part of any Anglo speakers echo chamber, selling, discussing arguments among themselves. That's very naughty, Rui. Jackie said it. She doesn't speak English. She speaks something else. Who's that, Jackie? Yes, she speaks Welsh, but she does speak English as well. Rude. Jackie, that lovely video you sent me of you on the canal boat, is that for public consumption? May I show that with a little bit of singing from you as well? Let's just go to Ponte Lima and see what has been sent to us by Bob. Thanks, Bob. We of course talked with João de Norte, with John Heimbach yesterday, about his experience of the 900-year birthday of Ponte Lima. Here's more video, and we've got some lovely photos too from Bob and Viv. Yeah, here's a little bit of video coverage.